Howdy, everybody. Welcome back. First day back from kind of a scattered vacation. And yeah, first day back to work. First day back recording. Kicking off the LEMUIRA series. So the members here who are going to be, the few of you that are here, I appreciate you. And yeah, it's been a long time since I did a video. But yeah, thanks for being here. Episode 1 of the LEMUIRA series for this month. There'll be episode 2 will come out Sunday. So stay tuned for that. We're going to make some references to California. California is an island, a remnant of Lemuria. And yeah, that'll be a good one. But in this one, we're going to discuss an article from 1926. It's called Records Disclose Story of an Ancient Land West of America. And I picked this one because it's a good transition. It's kind of a good intermingling between Atlantis, connecting some dots, making some references to the Yucatan. And yeah, so let's jump right in. Don't waste too much time. Again, thanks for being here. So we'll go over the illustrations here, and we'll jump into the article. Again, Records Disclose Story of Ancient Lands West of America. The Sunday Star, Washington, D.C., January 3rd, 1926. Continent of Mu, called Motherland of Man, believed to have been doomed by successive upheavals, beginning perhaps about 10,000 BC. One of the world's greatest civilizations, indicated by sacred tablets and manuscripts in Burma, inscriptions in Latin America, and worldwide similarity of certain ancient symbols. 60 million inhabitants in the area, 5,000 to 6,000 miles long. In between this and next month's series, I'll be doing a short round of videos, 1 or 2, maybe 3, probably just 2. We're going to discuss the swastika, the origin of the symbol, its relationship with Buddha, Mexico, Guatemala, and the Mediterranean, and many other places, Burma being one of those places, and why this symbol that was sacred in Atlantean times as well as Lemurian times, what that means. So yeah, over here on the left we have excavating a colossal monolithic statue on Easter Island. I have a few more Easter Island videos to come. Those will be outside of the membership series, so stay tuned for those. This map is really important, indicating places where written records have been found. Written records, okay, that's the dot. So Lhasa, Burma. My apologies here. Let's zoom in a little bit so you can get a better idea. That's why I chose this as a thumbnail. So you can kind of see here. Location of prehistoric monolithic statuary. That's these dots, as well as these islands, okay? Yucatan, Easter Island, Marquez, Hawaii, Samoa, Tonga, Fiji, Panape, as we covered in my last video. Check that one out. The first explorers to Easter Island said that Panape was eerily similar. And Panape, the ruins of the structures go 40 meters into the water. And we'll talk about another Easter Island article where they say, is there a lost continent underneath the waters of Easter Island? Now, you can only imagine. Scuba diving was closed off for quite a long period of time around Easter Island. And that's happened in many of these islands. And then third, where architectural and monumental stone carvings bear geometric figures relating to Mu. Here we have a diagram illustrating geological conditions of Mu before the continent was submerged. Its foundations were undermined by a vast series of gas chambers. All the zooming in the world isn't going to make this text appear, but essentially what they're showing you is that Mu was on top of a structure like this, and then this was all ocean, and that it sat on top of a giant gas chamber. And this belt here, back on the map, is called the gas belt. And this is really important to remember because I've mentioned Edgar Cayce many, many times. And those of you who've seen quite a few of my videos remember I've talked a lot about the gas, natural gas, and radium and their relation to one another, and how these things have shaped and sculpted the land that emerges or submarines above and below the water. And these effects and earthquakes and volcanic mechanisms are all very much related to these structures, and radium plays a very important role in this. Most of it was worshipped as a god, Vulcan and Ra and all these, not all, but many of these gods have so many overlays. It's pretty amazing. Next, it says remains of prehistoric temple of Uxmal, Yucatan. As we get more into the language and symbology of the Yucatan, you will see the correlations between Atlantis and Mu. Here we have another picture of mysterious prehistoric statues on Easter Island, supposed to be peaks on sunken continent of Mu. Now, these, I think of Easter Island as a burial place, which is what it was. Giant mounds all over. And they were worshiping the volcano there. Again, the worshiping of volcanism has so many overlays worldwide. And this was a mountain of Mu, essentially. And we'll cover more material on that as we go along. But yeah, let's jump right in here. We're over here on the left. I'm going to zoom in. Again, this one was photocopied poorly, so there will be parts I won't be able to read and you won't be able to see, so bear with me. The recent reports from France that land in the Atlantic Ocean seems to be rising to the surface, and maybe the lost continent of Atlantis, reappearing, brings to mind the terrible cataclysm which swallowed not only Atlantis, but the vast continent of Mu in the Pacific Ocean, and several smaller stretches of land. Far down in the darkness and cold of the ocean floor, these lost lands now rest. They were destroyed by gigantic upheavals of the Earth's crust, which may have been due to the formation of long gas belts underground. The legendary story of the destruction of these lands, especially of Mu, the motherland of man, is a strange one indeed. From it, we learn now how the mystery of the white races in the South Sea Islands may be solved, and how one of the world's greatest civilizations flourished in mid-Pacific and then was completely obliterated in a single night. A few decades ago, scientists would have been very doubtful about the possibility of the former existence in the Pacific Ocean of a continent such as Mu. But since these records have come to light, and comparisons have been made which prove that such a land did at one time exist, the proofs are several types. First, there are the sacred tablets found in an Indian college temple and deciphered with the aid of a learned priest. They had been written by the Nakals in Burma, and they told how the Nakals had originally come from Mu the land in the center of the Pacific. They also told of the story of creation, which had originated in this land. And finally, they related the destruction of Mu. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more for you guys. Second, there is confirmation of these accounts in other ancient manuscripts, including such a classic as the Hindu epic Ramayana, written by the great sage and historian Valmiki. In one place, for instance, he mentions the Nakals as coming to Burma from the land of their birth in the east, that is, the direction of the Pacific Ocean. Another document confirming the story of the sacred tablets is the Troano MS, now in the British Museum. This is an ancient Mayan book written in Yucatan. It speaks of the lands of the West, using the same symbols for Mu that we find in Burma and in Egypt, and it describes the destruction of the continent. Still, other written references to Mu can be found in the Codex Cortinus, a Maya book of about the same date as the Troana MS. Third, there are existing ruins which, by their location and the symbols with which they are decorated, tell of the lost continent of Mu, the motherland of man. On some of the South Sea islands, notably the Easter Island, Rarotonga, Maungai Island, the Cook Group, and the Caroline Group, there stand today remains of old stone temples which take us back to the time of Mu. At Uxmal in Yucatan, Central America, a ruined temple bears inscriptions commemorative of the lands of the West, whence we came, and the mysterious Mexican pyramid southwest of Mexico City was, according to its inscriptions, raised as a monument to commemorate the destruction of these same lands of the West. Also, we must consider the presence today on the South Sea Islands of the white natives mentioned by Frederick O'Brien. Fourth, there is the universality of certain old symbols and customs as discovered in Egypt, in Burma, in Central America, and other seats of ancient civilizations. These symbols and customs are so nearly identical as to make it certain they came from a common source. Mu. It is not possible here to give more than the bare outline of the scientific basis upon which the story of Mu rests, but I shall be glad to furnish such details as may be called for by students interested in the matter. With this background, then, we can follow the tale of the destruction of Mu, and, by analogy, of Atlantis. If we imagine ourselves back 12,000 or perhaps 15,000 years, we find that the continent of Mu was then a vast stretch of rolling country extending from north of Hawaii to Easter Island on the south. It was from 5,000 to 6,000 miles in length and some 3,000 or 4,000 miles broad. We do not know whether it was one undivided area of land or whether it was split up by straits into 2 or 3 parts. From the many inscriptions which speak of the lands of the West, however, it seems that Mu was in reality composed of 3 areas of land separated from one another by narrow channels. In this pleasant land lived 60 million human beings at a high stage of development. In many ways, their civilization compared favorably with ours. They were the greater part a white-skinned people, exceedingly handsome, if we are to believe the records with dark eyes and black hair. These white-skinned ones dominated a lesser number of yellow, black, and brown inhabitants. Many generations before, they had adopted a system of monarchical government. There was but one religion. It was the worship of the deity through symbols, and its creed included a belief in an immortal soul, which eventually returned to the great source from which it had come. Now listen to this part. Their high priest was called Ra-Mu and became the representative of the deity. Great carved stone temples without roofs served as places of worship. They were sometimes called transparent temples, as the absence of a roof allowed the rays of the sun to stream into the interior and fall on the heads of the faithful who were praying to Ra, as the sun itself was known. Now, again, keep this in mind when we're discussing the Yucatan, Phoenicians, swastika, soul. The swastika was also called soul. Very interesting. And Ra existing all over the globe. And to me, a representation of radiant light and many other things. But yes, that's why, again, Ra was not only worshipped in temples, but on mountaintops and near volcanoes. These temples were magnificent examples of construction, for the inhabitants of the land had mastered many of the principles of architecture. Great palaces of stone, huge statues, and monoliths were erected throughout the country. The people of Mu were remarkable navigators. Even in this far-off time before the historical era, human beings were sailing all over the world from the motherland of Mu, planting colonies in the lands which we now know today as Central America, Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Burma. In fact, the whole world of mankind at this time owed allegiance to the great Pacific continent. Mu was the center of the Earth's civilization, learning, trade, and commerce. Now, who does that sound like? Remember what we talked about with symbols. The Phoenician priests, as identified in the Mediterranean, wore white and purple robes covered in swastikas. Keep that in mind. How long Mu had been in existence we do not know for a certainty, but the time can be estimated at 40,000 years at least. While the civilization had been developing its culture on the surface of the land, nature had been working busily underground, hidden and unnoticed. The way for the great catastrophe was being prepared. Gas pockets played the leading role. Now, Edgar Cayce describes the same thing when he describes the destruction of Atlantis. That gas wells, gas pockets, led to the eventual demise and sinking of the continent. Isn't that funny? These pockets underneath the Earth's crust, filled only with hot gases. Now, these hot gases, radium melts everything around it. Volcanism, lava, gas creation. I've even hypothesized some creation of different types of crystals lead to the eventual creation of coal. And yeah, it all goes back to this. It's all a cycle, with radium being a key creator in all of this. And, nature abhors a vacuum and an empty space. And as radium underground dissolves material, it'll naturally create a cavity. And that cavity can only last so long until it is filled in. And that breaking down of matter that creates the cavity not only creates natural gas, but it also creates magma and magma chambers. And yeah, many other things to that. That's kind of a glossary overview. I will be doing more about that in the upcoming Radium series. That should be out Saturday, maybe tomorrow if I'm lucky. My work schedule has gotten fairly busy, and um, yeah, lots of family stuff going on. I'm taking care of my little sister's baby, my niece, now 3 days a week. She's only 3 months old, so that's a lot of work. So I've had to reduce my YouTube load. So thank you for understanding. And yeah, where was I? These pockets underneath the Earth's crust, filled only with hot gases, undermined the surface of the land. There were different systems of pockets. First came a series of isolated chambers, lying from 1 to 7 miles below the surface. They were connected with one another, but isolated from the next series a mile or so below, which was in turn followed by still another series, vast in extent, which stretched along at a depth of 10 to 20 miles or more below the cities of Mu. While Mu was flourishing, gas belts. Where did I go here? While Mu was flourishing, gas belts were being developed underneath the floor of the Pacific Ocean. They stretched in long, irregular lines over thousands of miles. Some of them passed beneath Mu. Their gases penetrated the lower level of chambers, which then became overcompressed. As a result, fissures opened in the rock, and gases escaped to the next series of chambers above, and were forced from there through the rock again into the upper level. Still, the enormous pressure kept increasing. The gases had only one means of expanding: to tear through the Earth's topmost crust and rush out into the open air. So one day, in a year, which we can guess to have been about 10,000 BC, Mu was shaken by fearful rumblings. The southern part of the country was torn by volcanic upheavals, and along the sandy shores, great tidal waves rolled in and destroyed many a city. The volcanoes belched out their fire and smoke on a flat country, so the lava did not run for any distance. Instead, it piled up around the craters and cooled in the form of immense cones, some of which may be seen today. Now, this is important because every single state in my Anomalous America series, and for those of you that remember seeing this now or my viewers down the road, if you haven't seen my Anomalous America episodes, definitely worth checking out. Every single one from Alaska through California shows immense stone cities buried by huge volcanic events. Oregon, Washington, California, Alaska, all of them show this very clearly. And they're on the mainland of America. So imagine what happened in the Pacific. The volcanoes, this first escape of the compressed gases from underground was not enough to wreck the entire land. The volcanic workings gradually ceased. The population resumed their former pursuits, and in a few generations, this ominous warning had been relegated to history. Then the second eruption came. This time, it was a decisive calamity. Gases from the chambers underneath rushed out into the atmosphere through volcanic spouts with deafening roars and huge tongues of flame. The chambers, now empty, had nothing to sustain their roofs, which collapsed and fell. This occurred throughout the extent of Mu. The whole surface of the continent collapsed and dropped into the empty chambers below. The waters of the ocean rushed into the vast hole thus formed, and in a short time nothing was left of this home of civilization except a few ridges of land still rising above the waters. These were the places that had the good fortune not to rest on subterranean gas pockets, so the emptying of the chambers had not undermined their foundations. On these islands, in the midst of a turbulent sea, the remnants of Mu's population huddled, waiting for the terrific quakes to abate. They had seen their temples and palaces, their ships and their roads, go crashing down, to be swallowed by the ocean. Almost all their fellow humans had been engulfed by the catastrophe. The few now left, all that remained of the motherland of man, the ruler of the world, were now destitute. They had nothing, no tools, no clothing, no shelter, barely a foothold of land, and no food. Around them hissed and steamed the boiling waters that had rushed into the fiery pit when the continent sank. Only small islands were left. Some of them we know today as the South Sea Islands, and some of their inhabitants can claim as remote ancestors the people of Mu. The destruction of Mu affected a wide area. Such an immense amount of water rushed in to fill up the hole left by the disappearing continent that the shoreline of the countries bordering on the Pacific was lowered to a considerable extent. Much new land appeared along the coasts when the waters of the ocean swept away to fill the gap left by Mu. This can easily be understood when it is remembered that the destroyed continent had occupied nearly one half of the area now covered by the Pacific. The land of Mu was not the only part of the Earth's surface that collapsed during the period of upheavals. The land bridge over the Bering Sea, I remember that. Okay, we talked about the Bering Sea and how important that it was in my Anomalous America Alaska episode. Between Alaska and Asia suffered a similar fate. A narrow strip running from what is now California down to the northwest corner of Colombia, South America, also sank. Now, we'll cover this, but think of California Island. The overland route to Europe in the North Atlantic Ocean, extending from America to Norway via Greenland, went down, as did likewise a small area of land off the east coast of Central America. Then there was the celebrated disappearance of Atlantis, the mid-Atlantic continent, which, at the time of its destruction, had apparently succeeded the submerged Mu as the center of the world's civilization. Like Mu, it sank beneath the waves when volcanoes erupted and the land collapsed into the treacherous gas chambers beneath. Yeah, so I wanted to start with that, and I hope you can see why. I hope you enjoyed it. There's just so many overlays here. It's going to tie in my Mexico series work. It's going to connect us with the Mediterranean. The gas chambers is really important because I've talked endlessly about this. If you haven't seen my conversations about that with the Radium series and some of my collaboration videos with Dr. Longo of Old World, Florida, I cover this quite extensively with him. But yeah, the records disclose story of ancient lands west of America. Man, I just think that's so great. And thanks for being here. Thanks for sticking with me, members. It hasn't really been worth it to some of you, I'm sure, because I just haven't put enough content out for a membership to make much sense. So for those who've stuck around, thank you so much. And for anyone new, welcome. And I look forward to continuing this series and reading your comments. And yeah, have a wonderful day. Look forward to more material coming out this week. Have a great day. Bye.